welcome. It's Cristy Fincher. I am so excited to have you join me for the Gardens Block of the Month quilt. For this year, 2019, we are going to be making this quilt behind me called The Gardens. The pattern for this quilt has been a very long time coming, and I'm really happy to finally be at a point where I am able to share it and give you videos on how to make each part of the quilt. The Gardens here is a medallion style quilt, starting in the middle right here with the garden pond, and then we have orange peel appliques that come next, and we throw a little in the middle, and then we have the lattice wall, as I call it, which are like cross stitch or X blocks. We have some flying geese, and moving on through the quilt, there's hexagons. You can see that on the side. We have some 1-inch squares that we will strip piece, and then moving on out to the edges, we've got the butterfly border and then the sun and grass border, and those are done in various techniques that we will practice and work through each and every month. This quilt is really just so special to me. I designed it from my love of gardens. I'm not a gardener though. I really don't have that great of a green thumb, but I love those gardens from TV shows like Downton Abbey and books like The Secret Garden, where you open up a wall or you walk through a maze and there's something new around every corner, or if you're standing on a balcony of some amazing English chateau or castle, you look down and you can see the whole garden before you. So that is the inspiration for the gardens and the inspiration for each round of borders that go around the quilt. In this first month, as I mentioned, we're going to make garden pond, and we're going to tackle some curved seams with a technique called Piec-lique. Piec-lique was created by my mom, Sharon Chamber, let's see, 15-ish years ago. She had a book with AQS called Piec-lique Curves the New Way, and it's since gone out of print. Even though there aren't really copies available, we do have lots of patterns, and it's really the technique that's important, and I'm here to share that with you in the first round of videos following this. Here is one of the blocks, or the central block, the garden pond. In the videos coming up, you'll see how each block is made, and you'll probably notice that they're just Drunkard's path blocks. There's quite a few techniques out there for making those types of blocks. The technique I'm going to show you will go beyond just making a Drunkard's path. You can use the technique for virtually any curve, improv, or patterned, or your very own, or anything at all that you would like to make a curved seam with. And then in month 2, we're going to jump right into my favorite applique technique, which I think you're going to really enjoy. Here's another little sample. This one has the appliques in the middle. It was a little sample I was working on for classes I was teaching. So you can see you can use so many variations of colors for this quilt. This one is extremely scrappy. This is my original, and it has not been quilted yet. I have another version which I will pop up the picture for, and it is made completely with ombre fabrics from V & Company, or V & Co. from Moda Fabrics. Vanessa Christensen designs those fabrics, and I have kits in my shop for those, for making the quilt out of both regular ombre and confetti, which I'll show you coming right up. Here is another version with a dark background. So this is all by Barry J for Art Gallery Fabrics. I've gotten to the X's, the lattice wall, and you can see I used a dark background, which it may look black to you, but it's actually very dark navy blue. And this one has been a lot of fun to make, switching up my color choices and using prints and solids in ways I may not have thought to use before. So next up, I'm going to switch the camera around, walk you through fabrics that I'm using, threads, talk to you about techniques, and then we'll hop right into the meat and potatoes and show you how to make the garden pond block. Again, thanks for joining me, and I hope that you have a wonderful year and learn a lot that you can add to your own quilting toolbox of skills. Let's talk about fabrics and threads, tools and techniques, and all of the things that we're going to be working with during this block of the month. This is part of the introduction. When you sign up for the block of the month, you'll receive a link via Send Owl Downloads. And in that link will be files for each month of the block of the month. I used Ombres by Vanessa Christensen, V & Co. on this quilt here. This one is it's really hard to pick favorite, but because I love my scrappy one too, but this quilt is pretty spectacular. I finished it and had it quilted, and the amazing Kathleen Riggins, I'll give you a link for her. She quilted it. It's just breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking. So the ombres that I used, I have available in kits, and these ombres are pretty wonderful. One of the reasons I love them so much is how they gradiate, how the color flows in the ombre. You can see here the salvage on Lagoon. This is the first color that we use. It's like a teal-y aqua. At the selvage it's dark, and then it graduates to light in the center. Now this is a fat quarter, so if it weren't cut, it would go from light to dark toward the next selvage. But for this month, you only need a fat quarter of it, so that's why it's cut that way. And I also have kits to make it with the confetti ombre. It's also by Vanessa Christensen, and the confetti ombre is the exact same colors as the original, but it has these really beautiful metallic gold polka dots and then darker dots that are of the same value of the same Lagoon teal color. Or I really shouldn't call it teal because there is an actual teal ombre, so we'll just stick with Lagoon. So on this Lagoon, you can see the dots graduate as well. They're very dense where the color is darker, and then they spread out and scatter as it gets lighter. So I'm actually going to use that one for my own this month. It'll be my 5th quilt, but it is really a fun quilt to make. So in the kits, you can choose whether you want the regular ombre or the confetti. The kits also come with fabrics for the borders, which you can see in the picture here. And those are 30s Yellow from Moda and Nautical from Moda. So those are included in both kits. And then you have the option whether or not you want background fabric with the kit. And background fabric is just white, bleached white. And you can use any background you choose if you want to get just the ombre kit. In addition to the fabrics, I have thread sets available. These are Soie Surfine, which is silk thread. They are a dream to sew and quilt with. They are finer thread, so I'd equate them to about a 60-ish weight. They're quite strong. They make really nice seams, and they are just really lovely. I also give you the option of the monofilament, which we use for the applique, so you can get the thread set with or without. That's totally up to you. Let's do a little walkthrough, a quilt walkthrough. We have our center here, and that is Garden Pond, and it is done with curved seams. We're going to use the Piec-lique technique that I mentioned. The next round is applique, and this is turned edge applique, although you could certainly do it raw edge, but I will teach you my favorite turned edge applique. Then we will be making the lattice wall, which are X blocks. They're done with a slice and insert technique. Then we will be making the daylilies border, which is made of flying geese blocks. You can piece these traditionally, or you can piece these with foundation piecing, totally up to you. And then we have our violets, which are the hexagons on the outside of the flying geese. After that, we have this dark blue, which I call the hydrangeas. So it kind of finishes off the flower portion of the garden. And then the turquoise portion are the butterflies, and they're done with a snowball 4-patch sort of technique. And then we have the grass and sun border, and that is done with, originally I did it with paperless paper piecing, which I will show you, but you can do it with traditional foundation or paper piecing. And then we have our final borders. For techniques, as I mentioned, we're doing the curved seams. So for curved seams, we're going to be using spray starch. This is my favorite. You'll also need a stencil brush. I will walk you through why, but it's a really fun and interesting way to do curved seams. We'll also be doing glue basting, so you'll need your washable school glue with the microfine tips. Both of these I sell in my shop. I also have the stencil brushes. This one's about a 1/2 inch or so, but it's just a dense brush that's really easy to use. Next up, for applique, you'll need applique foundation paper. I use Sharon's Secret Foundation, which works really, really nicely for doing turned edge applique. It has no right or wrong side, and in the kit you get a yard of it to use, and you can do any turned edge applique with this. Then for our flying geese, we use a couple of tools. I'm going to show you one method of making them using the Fons and Porter 1/2 and 1/4 ruler. You can also use the flying geese Fons and Porter ruler, and trimming them with the block lock ruler, which is one of my favorites. And I, in addition, have a tool kit available that includes both of these rulers, plus the tips, the microfine tips, and a refillable bottle that you can pour glue into and keep handy. So that is available as well. We'll do more applique with the hexagons, and then some strip piecing, which you just need your rotary cutters. Speaking of which, this one's my favorite. It's the Olfa Splash. It comes in a lot of really fun colors. And you'll need some good scissors. These are my favorite kind of utility scissor. They're by Famore products, and they have a nice cozy handle and a short blade that is blunt at the tip. So where you stop cutting, you actually stop cutting. And they're micro serrated, so they work really, really well for cutting applique. And just a rotary ruler. You'll probably need a couple different sizes. This is one I use quite often, but for cutting bigger pieces like borders and things, you'll want a bigger ruler. So why am I doing this? Why in the world would I run a block of the month? It's a lot of fun. I love teaching, and it's a really great way to allow me to bring my skills and my knowledge to you and share what I've learned through all of my years of sewing and quilting. And it's just such a pleasure to get to do this and have this be my job. I mean, really, it's just the coolest thing. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the Piec-lique technique that is going to start up right after this. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll provide the link for joining the block of the month, because we would love to have you. We have a private Facebook group, so you can ask questions and join in the community there. And you're welcome to watch the videos and learn some new techniques. But I do ask, if you make the quilt, that you do purchase the pattern. Independent pattern makers really work hard to bring their skills to you, and when you can support us, we really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get started on the Gardens block of the month for 2019. In this video, we are going to be making this central part of the quilt called Garden Pond. Just ignore this applique. This part is for month 2, so we won't be putting these on this month. We're going to focus on the pond portion. So this part of the quilt is the center, and as I mentioned in the introduction to the gardens, The quilt is done in a medallion style, which means that kind of starts right in the middle with a central block, and then it builds border by border by border from the center on out until the entire quilt is built. So this month, we're just doing this central portion, and we are going to tackle curved seams. I have taught this technique for 14, let's see, my son is 13 and I was pregnant with him the first time I ever taught it. So for 14 years at least. Curved seams are interesting because they are intimidating just because of this curve within the block. But there are so many techniques, and the technique I am going to teach you today is called Piec-lique. It is a play on the words piecing and applique. So while the block or piece is sewn by machine on a seam line, it has the look sometimes of it being appliqued. And what we're going to be doing is cutting pieces that are a bit larger than what we need. And look, they're not even super accurate. I mean, I even have a notch, a little notch in this one here, if you can see that. There you go, you can see that there. And it's an extremely forgiving technique, but you end up with really wonderful results. So we're going to cut big pieces. Then we are going to turn the edge of this outside part with our templates that I'm going to walk you through. And then this is actually glue basted, so you can see how this bigger quarter circle overlaps, and we have this nice curve. It's not even sewn yet. And we will create each block by sewing along this curve on that crease that we create by turning the edge over with the templates. After they are all done, everything gets trimmed up nice and neat, and you end up with a block that is just lovely. Now, quarter circles or Drunkard's Path blocks, as these are very commonly known, come in lots of variations. The variation, or the version we are going to be making today, has a 1/4 inch at the where the quarter circle and your background fabric come together. There are others where there's a 1/2 inch. I mean, you could even go bigger. It just depends on the design of the actual quilt that you're going for. And for this, we actually would want those seams to come together at our seam allowance and create the look of it just kind of flowing right into each other without a gap in between. So that's what we're going for. And I'll walk you through every step of the technique called Piec-lique. It was created, engineered by my mom, Sharon Shamber, 16-ish years ago. There's a book that was published by AQS quite some time ago called Piec-lique Curves the New Way. It has since gone out of print, but we have lots of great patterns that walk you through the technique. And now this video will help you out forevermore. So let's go ahead and shift into getting our fabrics prepared, cut, turning our edges, and getting them all sewn together. This month's pattern, Garden Pond, for the Gardens Block of the Month, is available with your monthly download. So if you are just watching the video just to learn some new techniques, welcome. If you would like to follow along, I am happy you're here. If you would like to make the quilt, the pattern is available on my website. I'll provide the link, and the patterns will be delivered monthly to your email inbox, and you will find all of the instructions you need to make the block. And then I'll have videos for pretty much everything to help support you and walk you through the steps of various new techniques, like this Piec-lique technique, next month's applique technique. Then we're going to do various techniques for each of the additional borders that go around the quilt. In your instructions, you'll find the colors that I'm using and colors recommended, but you of course can choose your own, a coloring sheet and planning sheet so you can decide other colors you might like. And then I walk you through everything else just step by step. Now at the very back of the instructions, there's 2 pages, 12 and 13, and they are our template pages. They are exactly the same, except for the color. I'm extremely visual, and if all I have to do is look at something and just by the color I can tell that it has 2 different jobs, I'm less likely to confuse them. So the black printed templates are for our layout. So it's when we're actually assembling our block and glue basting it together prior to sewing. So this you'll need second. And then the first one that you'll need is the blue one, which is cutting and turning. And we are going to print one of these or trace one of these onto freezer paper. It's really important that we're using freezer paper. You're welcome to use Reynolds if that's all you have. Just keep in mind that Reynolds is quite thin, so if you can get a thicker freezer paper like what I carry in my shop, and I'll provide a link, or something that is carried by quilt shops, or even a thicker freezer paper that you can get from a butcher, anything like that, cut to size. The stuff I carry in my shop is already cut to size, 8.5 by 11, so it'll fit into your printer. Or if you cut it to size so it will fit through your printer, that would be great. Otherwise, you can trace it. So we've got 2 templates, and we are going to print one onto freezer paper, and then we are actually going to press that template to another piece of freezer paper to make it nice, thick, durable, and reusable. So let me show you that next. So this is one that I have printed and just rough cut, so you can, let's compare the two. So side by side, this is one just printed on regular paper, and then this is one printed on freezer paper, and I just rough cut it out. You don't have to use a ruler, and I actually recommend not cutting it directly on the line. So it's my biggest tip for this. It seems like you should, but really you almost want to have a little extra out here. So then you get a blank piece of freezer paper, and I've got one here. And my biggest tip here is to actually press this to a pressing surface. So this board here is my pressing surface with a nice hot dry iron that has no steam in it. So no water in the reservoir, just dry, because paper and water don't mix. Press it directly to your pressing surface. This prevents any bubbles from occurring between the 2 layers. You might get a few, but that just comes with practice. And then you press or lay this on, and if you want to kind of nest it in one area versus the other. So let's say I want to use the paper more rather than just putting it right in the middle. I can kind of scooch it, and then I have all this area for another piece. And then while it's still warm, press the 2 together. And then again while it's still warm, so you can see they're fused. So freezer paper is special because it has a plastic backing. It's not waxy, it's not adhesive, it's not a fusible, but shiny sides down, these will stick together. So again, this was the shiny side, it goes down, and then this one, the shiny side, was down, so that they stick together. And now this is ready for us to cut apart and use. You just need a pair of scissors that you're happy to use with paper. And this does not have to be, this part does not have to be accurate, so you can just kind of rough cut it out. And then I'll rough cut these 2 apart. These will make 2 templates, so I can have an extra or do an assembly line style. And then we are going to cut this apart. And just real quick, let's run through what these symbols are on the templates. The arrows are the grain lines, so that will help you align the templates onto your fabric to keep the straight grain on the outside of the block. These numbers, letters tell you which piece they are and what color it goes to. So in the instructions, the letter A just indicates that it's a pond color. So for my purposes, it's going to be the ombre, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And the B letter refers to your background color. The reason why there's A and a B in these 2 sections is sometimes the pond color is on this outside, and sometimes the pond color is this part, and it's same for the background. Sometimes the background is this part, and sometimes the background's this. So it just helps to let you know what colors are going to be used. Now we're going to, let's talk about this dashed line. The dashed line tells you which edge needs to be turned, and that's really important for once we cut this apart. We're going to make one cut really smooth as possible right on the solid line next to that dashed line. We want to separate pieces 1 and 2. You want to keep this as smooth as possible. That template with the dashed line is now a turning template, and any grooves or wedges, anything like that that's made will show up in your fabric. So try and keep it as smooth as possible. So that's pretty good. I'm gonna just see if you're not happy with it, kind of just smooth it out. And now we've got our templates ready to go. First, they are cutting templates. They are going to help us cut our fabrics. Then we will use this one for turning our fabrics. Please let me know if you have questions. Okay, next let's go ahead and cut out some fabrics. So in the introduction, I walked you through various fabrics that can be used for the quilt. And the kits that I have available in my store include the ombre fabric. So let's take a look at the ombres one more time. These ombre fabrics are by Vanessa Christensen of V & Company, and they are manufactured by Moda. So if you take a look at the salvage over here, and this is to the center, so this is a fat quarter. Let me specify that. So at the salvage it's dark, and then toward the center it graduates to light, and then at the center it repeats light and it goes to dark at the other salvage. So a fat quarter will have the variations of the entire ombre within it. This ombre is the confetti ombre, and I love it because we've got some really pretty little dots that also graduate from kind of heavier to very dispersed. So we've got a lot of dots down here, and then as it gets lighter we have less dots. And I think this is going to be really fun to use in this quilt. And in my background, I really want to use this beautiful linen. Isn't that gorgeous? You can see how it sparkles. This linen is by Robert Kaufman. It's Essex linen, metallic Essex linen in sand. I do have this in my shop, although it's not included in the kits, but it is available in the shop, and I think I'm going to use this. But in my videos, I'm going to show using just a regular fabric for your background, because linen can be a little bit tricky. And unless you've used linen in the past, I wouldn't necessarily try it for a brand new pattern. You're welcome to give it a go, but I am going to give this a try and see how I like it together. I just think these two look really beautiful together. So for cutting out your templates, this technique, Piec-lique, is really forgiving. You don't even have to press your fabrics first. If you have done the Stellar Stars block of the month with me or watched the videos, everything is pressed before we cut. For this technique, it can be a kind of a press as you go. You don't need to do a whole lot of fabric preparation unless you want to pre-wash. That you should pre-wash your fabrics if you prefer, and if you want to pre-wash, make sure you pre-wash everything down to the binding and backing. So to get started, we are going to kind of decide how many of what part of the ombre we want, and I've listed that in the instructions. So it's basically I need 4 of the darker ombre, 3 from this little guy, and 1 from this little guy. And then as I move through the various gradients of the ombre, I'm going to do the same, like 3 of this, 1 of this, and then move down, 3 of this, 1 of this, and that will give me a lot of variation. If you want less variation, you can keep your colors closer together. If you want more variation, space them out throughout the ombre. If you're not using ombre, just pick and choose what colors you want to use and how many of each template you will need to cut. Now, Piec-lique is special because, and different, because we actually cut out our templates from the back side, because these templates are the mirror image of the finished product. Now, these are a quarter circle and it's completely symmetrical. So for these, if you accidentally forget and cut from the front, it's not going to matter at all. If you do other Piec-lique patterns that I have in my shop or by my mom, Sharon, it is extremely important that you cut from the back because it will reverse the entire design. But for these, it's not vital, but it's nice to get into the habit. So what I want you to notice on these templates is this blue line here is actually the seam line where it will be finished in the block, and this outside line is your wiggle room seam allowance. There's about 1/2 inch. So it's better to cut these too big than too small because we can always trim them down. It's really hard to weave on or add on fabric if you've cut too much. So we are going to cut around this outside edge, and then here where it's actually cut to size, you're going to eyeball about a finger width, which is about 1/2 inch, or you can get out a ruler. I'm just going to eyeball it and you're going to go around. Remember, this does not need to be perfectly accurate and smooth. It just needs to be bigger. So what that looks like is this. See, I'm not even using a ruler. It's just rough cut because this is very forgiving. And then when I come out to this side over here, I'm just going bigger. Do you see how that is? All the way around. So it is bigger all the way around. And then I'll rotate this to just give myself some space and make sure you give yourself room here. And we'll cut another one. Okay, again, you need to add that 1/2 inch around the curve. And then just go around the outside edge of the template, kind of holding it in place. Now this is freezer paper. You could even use your iron and just kind of press it in place and it'll stay stuck while you cut. Just don't press it while it's on the cutting mat. You want to do that on your pressing surface. Okay, so I've got 2, and I'll just keep cutting until I get all of the ones cut that I need for this block. Remember, we need 1 of these, so I'm going to kind of nest this in. And for this one, I want to make sure I add on the inside curve. Again, just eyeball it. It can be bigger. We're just going to trim it on down after we're all done anyway. Okay, and now look how nice that looks. These are ready for the next step. By the magic of video, I'll have all these cut and ready for the next step.